In this episode, we're going to look at Mahayana and the Way. If you'd like to join us for this video of method and wisdom, please grab your cushion or a chair if that's more comfortable for you. Find a quiet space where you won't be disturbed for the next few minutes. And if you'd like to light a candle or incense stick, that's also totally up to you. We'll begin when you are ready. Pause the video if need be. So what is Mahayana? Mahayana is a term that refers to the Great Vehicle or the Great Way. It refers to a collection of Buddhist teachings that originated in India around the 2nd century CE. But it was really during the 6th and 7th centuries that the Mahayana tradition flourished. Within the Mahayana tradition, there are many paths and practices, but ultimately they all point towards enlightenment. So, in looking into Mahayana, we're looking into the way of the Buddha, the path that leads to liberation from suffering. There are two primary texts that contain the essence of Mahayana teachings. The first is the Heart Sutra, and the second is the Diamond Sutra. In both of these sutras, we hear about the Bodhisattva. The Bodhisattva is someone who has started on the path to enlightenment, but has not yet reached the end. It's also someone who vows to help other beings reach enlightenment. Bodhi means awakening, and Sattva means being, or one who lives. So a Bodhisattva is literally the one who lives in awakening. And in this context, the word striving is actually much closer to the word agonizing. To become a Bodhisattva, you have to experience great pain. You have to agonize over the suffering of others, and then vow to do something about it. When I think about someone who fits that description, it makes me think of my mum. My mum is the most compassionate person I know. She's the one who agonizes over the suffering of others and tries to help them. That's why when I heard the term Bodhisattva, she immediately came to mind. The Bodhisattva is the embodiment of compassion. But the interesting thing is that within the Buddhist tradition, compassion and wisdom are considered to be the same thing. This might sound strange, because we usually think of compassion as something soft, something that comes from our heart, whereas wisdom seems to come from our head. But if you think about it, compassion can also be very hard, like what I mentioned earlier, having to agonize over the suffering of others and then vow to do something about it. And wisdom can also be very soft. Think about the kindness and patience that it takes to sit here with another human being and try to understand their perspective without judging it. I hope that helps to make sense of how compassion and wisdom are seen as one in Buddhism. Both of these qualities are necessary to achieve Bodhi, which brings us to our next term, Bodhicitta. Bodhi still means awakening, but citta means mind. So Bodhicitta refers to the mind of awakening, the quality of being able to see reality clearly and to respond to it compassionately. It's the mind that says, yes, there is suffering in the world, and yes, I want to do something about it. Now, it's important to note that the Bodhicitta is not a feeling. It's an attitude. And attitudes, as we know, can change. Feelings will come and go, but having a strong attitude that guides our actions over long periods of time is crucial to achieving our goals. When I was younger, I wanted to be a musician, so I practiced playing guitar every day for hours. At the time, I had no idea how many hours musicians practice each day, but I knew that if I didn't practice every day, I would never reach my goal. Similarly, if you want to cultivate the bodhicitta, you need to practice doing so every day. That's why meditation is so important. Meditation helps you to access and strengthen the Buddha. During meditation, we work with our breath, bringing our awareness to the present moment. As we continue to do this over and over again, we start to notice the constant stream of thoughts that arise and pass away like clouds passing by in the sky. Eventually, we get better and better at simply observing these thoughts, without reacting to them, and as we do so, we open ourselves up to greater clarity and compassion. The bodhicitta is the driving force behind the Mahayana path. It inspires the Bodhisattva to take action, to work tirelessly, to alleviate the suffering of all beings. And the action that the Bodhisattva takes is known as the Bodhi. The word Attara means conduct or going. So Bodhicaryavatara can be translated as the going forth of the Bodhisattva. It's the act of setting out on the path to enlightenment. The Bodhicaryavatara is a powerful concept because it reminds us that we do not need to wait for someone else to save us. We have the power to create our own destiny. All we need is the courage to set out on the path and the determination to follow through. It's common for people to think that enlightenment is something that just happens to you. Like one day you're walking down the street and the next you're enlightened. But the truth is that enlightenment is something that you create. It's the result of countless actions taken over many lifetimes. The Bodhicaryavatara teaches us that we can all become Buddhas if we have the determination to do whatever it takes. For example, in Zen Buddhism, there's a story about a monk who asked his teacher, "When I attain enlightenment, what will it feel like?" And the master replied, "You will feel like you have been doing it all along." That's because the path to enlightenment isn't some special path. It's just living a good life, helping others, and being kind. The Bodhisattva embodies the Bodhisattva. They live out the ideals of compassion and wisdom. They are the embodiment of the awakened mind. They are the ones who have realized that everything is interconnected and that we are all in this together. But the Bodhisattva doesn't just realize this intellectually, they live it. They let it permeate every aspect of their being. They are the ones who show us what is possible. They inspire us to be better. As we continue to learn about the Bodhisattva, we may find ourselves asking, how can I be more like them? How can I embody the bodhicitta in my own life? And this is where the prajna paramita comes in. Prajna means wisdom, and paramita means perfection. So, prajna paramita is the perfection of wisdom. It refers to the ability to see things as they really are, to understand the nature of reality. You may be thinking, I already know how things work. I understand that everything is interconnected. So what's difficult about that? Well, actually, understanding intellectually and embodying in our actions are two different things entirely. For example, we know that anger doesn't really solve anything. On an intellectual level, we may even agree that anger is a destructive emotion. But actually embodying that wisdom, actually being able to let go of anger when we feel it, that is truly challenging. That's why the prajna paramita is so important. It reminds us that we don't always get it right. We are imperfect human beings doing the best that we can, but we should always strive to embody the wisdom that we hold. We should always try to be more compassionate, more understanding, and more forgiving. In the Zen tradition, there is a story about a master who was asked what the most important thing he learned in his years of practice was, and he replied, "Don't know." He went on to explain that whenever he thought he knew something, he would share it with his students, and invariably they would say, "Well, that's easy. Can you do this?" And the answer was always no. So the most important thing he learned was not to cling to his opinions. Instead, he learned to approach each moment with an open mind, ready to learn from anyone. This is the essence of the prajna, the willingness to let go of our attachment to our own views, and to be open to the possibility that we don't always have it right. We've looked at several key terms in the Mahayana tradition, including the Buddha, the Bodhisattva, the Bodhicaryavatara, the Bodhisattva, compassion and wisdom, the prajna. Now let's take a step back and see how they all fit together. At the heart of Mahayana is the Bodhicitta, the mind of awakening. It is the driving force behind the Bodhisattva's journey, and the prajna, it inspires them to take action, to work tirelessly, to alleviate the suffering of all beings. The Bodhisattva embodies the Bodhisattva. They live out the ideals of compassion and wisdom. They are the embodiment of the awakened mind. They are the ones who show us what is possible. They inspire us to be better. In our own lives, we can cultivate the bodhicitta through meditation and mindfulness. We can learn to see the world as it really is and to respond to it with compassion. When we do this, we are living the way of the Buddha. We are walking the path that leads to enlightenment. There are many paths to enlightenment, but ultimately, they all lead to the same place. The Mahayana tradition reminds us that the most important thing is to have a pure heart and a clear mind. With these two things, we can accomplish anything. So my question for you is, how do you embody the bodhicitta in your life? What does the term Mahayana mean to you? Please drop your answers in the comment section below. We'd love to hear from you. Also, if you've enjoyed this episode of Inside the Mind, we'd be grateful if you could give us a thumbs up. Your support means a lot to us. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Inside the Mind. If you found this episode helpful, we'd be grateful if you could give us a thumbs up and subscribe for more content.